About 5% of kids between the ages of 2 to 5 will develop some stuttering during childhood. A small number of children will have a stutter that does not go away. Wendy Duke is a speech pathologist who works with kids and adults who have speech disorders. She is particularly moved by Colin Firth's performance in The King's Speech. It is my pleasure to welcome Wendy Duke to Studio 4 to tell us more. Nice to meet you.
Really nice to meet you too, Fanny.
My producer told me you were impressed by The King's Speech because?
I was so impressed with The King's Speech on so many levels. First, Colin Firth's performance was so authentic. I mean, it was just like having a client in the room with me. It was just absolutely wonderful. And also, the subject matter was so positive because usually Hollywood has had a history of portraying people who stutter in a completely negative light. You know, they're either serial murderers or buffoons.
Sure, a fish called Wanda.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's just so refreshing to see somebody who has a speech problem who is depicted as a normal human being, royal in this case.
Right.
But just with a speech problem.
Well, that's interesting, knowing all you know about it, about speech and helping people who stutter, that Hollywood did a very good job.
They really, really did. They really did.
What are the root causes of stuttering?
Well, that is the million-dollar question. Nobody knows absolutely for sure, but we are more and more inclined to think that people are born with a disposition towards stuttering, and that people will have some triggering cause that will allow that disposition to come forward. And then from that point on, it becomes extremely complex. There are learned behaviors associated with it, psychosocial issues, and all kinds of things. It's a complex knot.
Sure. So genetic link, perhaps?
Probably. In fact, there has been a genetic link specifically identified that accounts for about 5 to 9% of the people who have what we call developmental or early onset stuttering.
How early? The minute a child begins to speak, or does it take a while?
It usually evolves between the ages of approximately 2 to 5 years. And some kids just have a normal period of what we call normal disfluency, where they're just doing easy repetitions of words as they learn to put language sentences together. But some kids have more than that. They'll have some visible struggle with their speech at that age, and those are the kids you want to keep an eye on. And if it goes on for more than about 6 months, you really should be seeing a speech pathologist.
Okay, so at 3, if a child starts to stutter, are there certain words or consonants or vowels that they have trouble with, or does it matter? Is that too specific?
Not necessarily. When we see adults who stutter, oftentimes they will tell us that they stutter on words that start with B or words that start with A, and usually those are things that they have learned, like they've had a bad experience. Maybe if their name is Bob and they've had a bad experience saying their name, then they will develop a problem around that. But for young children who are just beginning to stutter, that's not so much the case.
In the case of the Duke of York, George VI, when he had to speak on the radio,
yes,
during war time, knowing Winston Churchill was listening, that had to be a lot of pressure.
That's got to be about as high as pressure can get. Although I will say I've had the opportunity over the last few months to be on the radio with a couple of the graduates of my stuttering program, and they have all risen to the occasion beautifully. It's been just fantastic, even though they've been on live radio in one situation, and they never would have imagined themselves in that predicament. Yes.
So the confidence helps, I'm sure.
Yes.
And because you've worked with them, maybe because you were there, I don't know.
Maybe.
Let's take a look at, we have a clip from the King's Speech.
Yes.
And you can take a look at it and then tell me what is going on here.
Okay, for sure.
Not Hollywood-wise.
Yeah.
Speech-wise.
Okay.
Okay.
What'll I call you?
Your Royal Highness. Then sir, after that.
How about Bertie?
Only my family uses that.
In here, it's better if we're equals.
If we were equals, I wouldn't be here. I'd be home with my wife, and no one would give a damn.
Well, please don't do that.
I'm sorry.
I believe sucking smoke into your lungs will kill you.
My physicians say it relaxes the throat.
They're idiots.
They've all been knighted.
Makes it official, then.
It's a great line. I'm certain smoking is not good for us, period.
Yes.
We know that.
Yeah, we do now.
Long gone the day when they told us the doctor knew for sure that smoking would relax us.
Yes.
Or that we'd come a long way baby because we had a thinner cigarette if we were female. We know that's not good. So as you listen to Colin Firth
Yes.
playing Duke of York, what was happening there?
Well, one thing I found interesting at one point, what the audience won't know, is that you said to me, well, is he stuttering? Mm-hmm. And I said, yes, he is. Those blocks, those hesitations are a form of stuttering. And that's a subtlety that most actors don't portray when they are depicting a stutterer. They'll just go, you know, ba, 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 Bertie. Mm-hmm. They won't have all those subtleties like that Bertie, that kind of a stutter, but that is a stutter. The other thing I noticed about that particular clip, which I really enjoyed because it's so authentic, is that you could tell when he was stuttering on the word throat, when he said, relax, the doctor told me it relaxes my throat. It was really clear to me that he is doing something that people who stutter do all the time. He was going to say voice box or something like that. You could see he was about to frame that word, but he switched at the last minute to avoid stuttering on it.
Okay, and how does somebody who stutters know which words are difficult?
You know, we don't actually know how they do that, but most people who stutter will tell us that they can just tell as they're going through a sentence. They will just know that they're going to stutter on a word, and so they switch it to avoid it.
Of all the languages in the world, is there one where people stutter more?
No.
If you're speaking French or Spanish or English or Russian or Chinese, it doesn't matter.
No, it's an equal opportunity impairment. People stutter in all different cultures, all different socioeconomic backgrounds, all kinds of different intellectual ranges, the whole bit. The only thing that is unequal is that more females than males outgrow the problem. So in preschool, you might see almost equally boys and girls stuttering, but by the time they're adults, it's about 4 or 5 men to every 1 woman.
And do we know why?
No, we don't know why, but it's a really interesting puzzle, which again makes you wonder about the causes of it.
So what is the difference between somebody who has a stutter and somebody who at the age of 4, 5, 45 has perfect diction, speech? I'm not sure what the correct term is.
What's the difference between them?
Physically or mentally? Physically, like is there something in the throat or?
No, there's nothing in the throat.
No.
Although the problem, of course, causes tension in the throat because people have a lot of sometimes visible struggle trying to get the word out, so they'll tighten up their throat, they'll tighten up maybe their jaw or their lips. In terms, we think it's really probably neurological in origin. We're not sure about that, but we think it's neurological in origin because with the advent of so many new neuroimaging techniques, such as functional MRIs and things of that nature, we do know that the brain activation patterns of people who stutter are different than the brain activation patterns of people who don't.
When you work with somebody who is brain damaged from a car accident, a stroke, and someone who never had trouble getting words out does, what's different?
Oh, well, it's very different. With someone who stutters, they know what they want to say clearly. They have the word in their mind. With someone who has a condition called aphasia, which is a loss of language following stroke or other kind of damage to the brain, they will lose the word. Like they just can't bring the word to mind, or maybe they can't recognize the word.
Okay.
Or the wrong word will come out. So it's a very different process.
I had a friend who had a stroke, and when he started to tell you something, he could get halfway through the sentence, and if he messed up the word, he would have to go back to the beginning of the sentence and start the whole sentence again.
Because that would cue him. That would give him the semantic or meaning cue for the word he's missing.
Okay. In your office, somebody comes to you. How do you test them? The degree of how bad your stutter is.
Specifically for stuttering,
Yes.
what we do is we interview them. We get a case history. We get a reading sample. We often get a sample of them talking on the telephone if they are willing to do that, and many are not. And then what we do is we have videotaped that whole thing and we analyze it. As you saw with Colin Firth, not all stutters are audible. Some of them are only visible. So we would need the videotape to go through and actually count how many syllables did they say in a minute and how many of those syllables were stuttered on in a minute. So we'll end up with two measures. We'll end up with their rate of speech in syllables per minute, and we'll end up with a percentage of syllables stuttered. And we'll use that as an indication of severity, those two numbers.
And then you have to work with somebody who has this issue, and we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll find out how you do that.
Okay.
Okay, Wendy Duke, our guest. She's a speech language pathologist.